Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Sandy, Pivotal Moments. The mission of Coffee with Sandy is truly about talking about those pivotal moments in your life that may have changed that you didn't expect. And to show that even though you've gone through some hard times or, your life has changed, that we actually can move through that and our life can be better in some aspects. And today I have the pleasure of having Rachael with me. And Rachael, if you don't mind introducing yourself to everybody, that would be great.
Hello, I'm Rachael Ortega, and I'm a psychic medium. And what else do I say?
Whatever.
That's who I am.
Yeah. So, what was it that you wanted to be when you were in second grade or when you were in grade school? Do you remember?
I do. And when I was a little kid, I wanted to be either a veterinarian or an obstetrician.
Wow. Totally different. Well,
babies.
Medical anyway, right?
I loved babies and I loved animals.
Yeah, very cool. And how did you learn about that?
Well, I was a kid that was always bringing home all the stray animals.
I bet your mom loved that.
Oh, yeah, they couldn't stand it. I was always bringing home puppies. And back then, you never see stray animals running around the streets anymore. Back then, streets were full of puppies and kittens.
Yeah. Did you grow up here?
I grew up in California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Southern California. And so, I was always bringing home animals.
Yeah. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have one older brother and two younger brothers.
Oh, so you're the only girl in the family.
I'm the only girl.
Oh, yeah. How is that like?
I feel like I had the most responsibility.
Really?
I grew up very traditional family, so it was my job to take care of the kids, take care of the house, and my brothers are a lot younger than me. One's 7 years younger than me, and the other one's 14 years younger than me. And so I
you became
did a lot of
second parent.
Yes.
Or third parent.
Yes. And my older brother, he was, he got a truck when he was 16. He was off, working, doing whatever, going to school. And so I ended up with a lot of the responsibility of taking care of it. I used to get off the bus in high school. I'd get off the school bus, walk over to my brother's elementary school, pick him up, and then we'd walk over to the daycare where my 2-year-old brother was, pick him up, and then we'd walk home.
Oh, wow. And then did your parents both work then outside the home?
Yes, they did.
Okay. What did your mom do?
So both my parents were entrepreneurs.
Oh, really?
Yes. My mother had her own business. She cleaned house. She cleaned luxury apartments out in West LA. Yeah, high rises. And then my dad was a contractor. And so he helped build shopping centers.
Oh, wow.
And other things, they both always kind of did their own things. So.
Wow. Well, it was good that you were there available to support them.
Yeah.
Not knowing that you were doing that, but.
Yeah. And then eventually my dad got a job at the railroad.
And,
yeah, and then he did that until he retired.
Okay.
But I think that wasn't even until he was 50.
Really? What did he do at the railroad then?
He was a welder.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can make some good money being a welder.
Yeah.
Did he go to school for that, or do you know, or did he just learn on the job?
Yeah. My dad was really smart. He'd pick anything up. He was a musician also.
Oh, wow.
And so he could pick up any instrument and start playing a song.
Yeah. I was just telling somebody over the weekend that piano is what I want to learn. I learned when I was in second grade, I learned how to play the guitar.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not patient.
Yeah.
And so, pick up an instrument and try to learn it. I mean, I can Google it and I try to take my own lessons without somebody. But even if I paid for lessons, I'm too impatient.
Yeah.
That I want to know right now.
Yep. I get that.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. You could just pick up anything and learn or know it.
Yeah, he was really talented.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, did you change that dream though? Did you besides because you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, or?
Yes. Well, yeah, that dream did change.
Yeah.
As I got older, I just really wanted to have kids, and I wanted to be there for my kids every day, and I think because I missed my mom being home.
Yeah.
My parents wouldn't get home till it got dark.
Oh, really?
You know, so I'd have to get, because they wouldn't get home till like 6, 7 o'clock. So I'd get home, I'd have to feed my brothers, and as I got older, I would make dinner and stuff like that. And
Did you have to help them with their homework and stuff too, or was that kind of?
No, I think
that's not my job.
I don't think anybody was really doing homework in my house. I think my older brother.
Yeah. So how was it with your kids then? Did you kind of change their whole pattern?
I definitely parented different, yes. You know, sat down. Well, and I got to be a stay-at-home mom with my kids. So I sat down with them and did homework, and it was hard.
Yeah.
Sitting down with I used to help my older brother, my younger brother, the youngest. I used to sit down with him and do homework. Actually, I went to his conferences. Like, I went to a couple of his teacher-parent conferences too, because my parents worked. And he's only 5 years older than my oldest daughter.
Oh, okay.
So I used to walk him to school when he started kindergarten. I used to be the one that would take him to school and pick him up, and I'd have my baby with me.
So. I can't imagine. I'm so grateful that I don't have kids in school because of the new math. That I mean, I understand it because I've seen it often enough now that I understand it. But oh my goodness, I'm sure that I would be, you know, really having arguments with my kids. So in high school, what was your high school like?
High school was good. So in high school, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So
even though you did that with raising your siblings, you still wanted to be a mom.
I think because my parents worked, I wanted to be home. I wanted to be a mom and I always wanted to have kids. And I remember my aunt telling me that when I was little, I would say I wanted to have 10 kids. So I always wanted to have kids, and I always wanted to be a mom. But yeah, in high school, that was what my dream became. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and be home. And I probably, because, you know, I was one of those latchkey kids. So, and I remember when I was younger, my mom being home, and I really loved when my mom was home. And so that's what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. You know, I was a romantic anyways. I just wanted to fall in love, get married, and have kids.
Maybe that's why I struggled. I wanted to be home, but I also wanted to be famous. You know, that was my big thing. But now, knowing what the famous go through,
I know.
I think the Lord knew what He was doing. He's like, you can't handle it. And so you did end up having children.
I did.
How many do you have?
I have 5 kids, so halfway.
Yeah.
I realized, you know, halfway there, I realized probably more than I could chew. But so yes, we stopped at 5.
Yeah. So did you get married right out of high school then, or
kind of? Well, no, I got pregnant right out of high school, and so I got pregnant when I was 18. It was after I graduated, and then when my daughter was. So I had my daughter, and she was born in beginning of August, and of the following year after I graduated. So I had just turned 19 when she was born, and then when she was 7 months old, I got married to my first husband. And it was short-lived. We separated after I found out I was pregnant with my second daughter. So I think I was 3 months pregnant when I left him.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been a little difficult situation to make the decision to leave as well.
Yes. Well, and I always say as my daughter, it was just a bad situation. He had a lot of issues, and when I found out I was pregnant with my second daughter, I said, I can't do this. I can't bring another child into this relationship, and I didn't want my kids to grow up thinking that was normal. And it was an abusive relationship, and so getting pregnant with my second daughter, both my kids gave me the strength to get up and walk away.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great that you had your kids to fight for.
Yes. Oh, they always say they saved my second pregnancy. It saved me.
So then you got married again.
Yes. Well, then I was a single mom for 3 years.
Wow. Yeah, what did you do then just to make ends meet? During that time, because California, you were out there. Or did you move here?
No, I was still in California. And I lived with my mom for a while. I lived with my mom while I was pregnant.
You had her then too.
Yeah, I lived with my mom while I was pregnant, and then I got a job, and I finally got my own apartment.
What was the first job then that you had?
I was working at this burger place. And I was working at some burger place, and it was down the street from the apartment where I was going to move to. And so,
oh, nice.
So yeah, I lived there.
That's cool. But I mean, it just kind of everything fell into place then. With that.
Well, I always felt like God was watching over me.
Yeah.
And so my whole life, things have always just kind of fallen into place. And so that's kind of, how it's always been for me. Which has been, but I've always been really good at listening to my gut.
Yeah. How did you meet him?
We actually met at a nightclub. So, and I always felt like
in a bar.
And I always felt like we were meant to, to meet.
Really?
My friend had called me up and said, "Hey, I'm getting married next weekend. We're gonna elope. Let's go out tonight." I was like, "Okay, fine." I hadn't gone out in a while. I'd been kind of burned out from that, and I said, "Okay." My girls were always gone on the weekends. They'd go to their grandmother's house, and so I said, "Okay." So we go out, and she saw this guy, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that guy's so cute." And I was like, "Which one?" And she says, "That one." I'm like, "Oh, this girl's probably drunk already." And it was Jesse's friend.
Oh, okay. So, I was going to say it wasn't Jesse, right?
Yeah, no, it was Jesse's friend. And so later on, we went to the patio, and he was out there. Jesse and his friend were out there, and I went up to the friend. I think my friend wanted to smoke a cigarette, so I said, "Hey, you have a light?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "My friend thinks you're cute. You should go talk to her." And he says, "Oh, okay, well, here, you can sit here and talk to my friend."
Oh, wow.
So we sat down, started talking, and we just clicked. We just instantly clicked. And we just started talking and joking and laughing. And it was just like, if he would have told me that day, "Hey, let's just go off and get married," I would have been like, "Okay, let's go."
Really? It was that good, huh?
It was that good. And yeah, it was just like, we just really clicked. Like I felt like I'd known him forever. And but I told him, I said, "I have 2 little girls." He goes, "Oh, really? What are their names?" And I said, "Jessica and Alicia." And he says, "Oh, I always wanted to name my kids that." He goes, "My dad's name is Jesse," which was also his name. He said, "And my mom's name is Alicia."
Wow.
Yeah, so then our joke was always, I had named my kids after their grandparents before we even knew them.
Wow. How neat.
But yeah, we just clicked. We moved in together 4 months later.
Oh, I bet your family was like, "What are you doing?"
Oh yeah, they were like, yeah.
"He's just using you."
Oh yeah, my mom was having a hard time. She's like, "What are you doing? You have 2 kids." And I was like, "No, this is what I'm supposed to do." It was that feeling, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
And then 20 years later.
Yeah, so we moved in together 4 months later, and then a year later, let me see, we moved in together in October 98. And then our first daughter together was born November 2000. And we got married we had gotten engaged after we moved in together. And because I had told him, I said, "Look," because I had to move for work. I was working at the time, and I had to move for work. And so I said, "I'm moving." And he would come and stay, visit me, stay up on the weekends. He'd come and stay at my apartment, and my girls would be gone.
Did he live close?
He lived, no, not real close, like a half an hour away.
Oh, okay.
And so I said, "Look, I'm moving, and don't think you're just going to come and spend the night at my house, and just be here all the time. Like, if you want to be here all the time, then we should just live together, and you should help pay rent." And he was like, "Okay, that's fine." So we moved in together. Well, before that, I even said, "Okay, but if you're going to move in with me, then that means that's it. We're going to be together, and we're going to get engaged, and we're going to get married, because I'm not going to be bringing you in and having you around my kids. This is just temporary." He said, "Okay, fine, we'll get married too."
Wow.
And so we were living together, and he said, "Why don't you just stay home?" I was working full time. I was working 50 hours a week.
Oh, wow. At the burger place, or?
No, I had left that job, and I had gotten a job at I was assistant manager at a Burger King.
Oh, okay.
And but it was 50 plus hours a week. And so I hardly ever saw my kids. I hardly ever saw Jesse. And he was like, "Why don't you just stay home?" This was before I got pregnant with Bella. He says, "Why don't you just stay home?" And I'm like, "I can't. My kids I have to take care of." And I wasn't getting child support from their father. And he said, "Just let me take care of you. I just want you to stay home." And I said, "Okay, fine." So I quit my job. And then my brother called me. He's like, "What are you doing? Why'd you quit your job? Jesse's not even their dad. If things don't work out, you're not going to get nothing." And I was like, I I panicked. So
Yeah,
I got another job right away. I think I was home for like 2 weeks, and then I got another job. And
Because you listened to everybody else around you. Yep.
And Jesse was so upset. He's like, I told you, I'll take care of you. And I'm like, no, because if things don't work out, like, I still have kids to support. And he's like, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you guys. And I was scared. And then
what made you believe finally?
It was funny because I said, okay, fine, fine. I'll just, because it was causing a lot of friction between us.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And we were engaged already, but we hadn't set a date. And so I quit my job, and then like, I think a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with Bella.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then I was like, okay, fine. I'll stay home. But it was nice. It was nice being home. It's hard to work I don't know how people can work when they're pregnant. I couldn't do it. Like, my hat's off to you, because I was exhausted all the time.
Yeah. Yep. I'm trying to think. Okay, so my first son, I was in property management, commercial property management, and then I also had a part-time job at a consignment store. So I went from my day job to that job, worked 5 to 7, and then I worked as a bookkeeper.
Wow.
Because we were trying to make ends meet, you know, and I loved every minute of it, but it was stressful.
Yeah, it was hard. I think I worked when I was pregnant with Alicia. I think I worked till I was 5 months. And I was always falling asleep at work.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I was I worked at a men's clothing store.
Oh, yeah.
I was a cashier, and I was constantly falling asleep. And so and I worked with these 2 old men, these elderly men, and they would say, Rachel, go and sit in the back and go take a nap. And I'd say, okay. And I'd be sitting at the desk like this. And then they'd come out, the boss is here, you get up. I was like, okay. And my mom was like,
and I was just, that you had people like that to support you.
Yeah, I was so tired. My mom was like, why don't you just quit? That's when I was living with my mom. She's like, why don't you just quit and stay home? I'm like, okay. No, you have to tell me twice.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
Not to skip too far ahead, I was a stay-at-home mom. Me and Jesse, we got married. We had 3 more kids together. He told me he always wanted 5. And he said, well, since you already he said, since you already have 2, we only have to have 3 more. I was like, okay.
I wanted 10.
I always wanted at least 4.
Okay.
I always wanted at least 4. And so we had our 5. We had 3 girls. So we had 3 girls and then 2 boys. And I loved being able to be home and just raise my kids. And I used to always tell him, thank you for letting me have my dream.
Oh.
And he was a good provider. He worked hard for us.
What did he do?
So he was a mechanic.
Oh,
yeah.
Vehicles?
Yes.
Cars?
He was a master certified Toyota mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And then he worked for Firestone for a number of years. But he was very well respected in his industry. And because he was a really good guy, really gifted at he could put his hand on a car and tell you what was wrong with it.
Really?
Yeah, he was very gifted in what he did. So then we fast forward to 2019. And we've lived in the same house the whole time. Jesse's working at Firestone. He started telling me earlier in the year that he wasn't feeling good. Said he wasn't feeling good. So they sent him to the doctors. He was young, in his early 40s. He would go to the gym. He'd work out. He went to the doctors regularly. So he was relatively healthy. For all intents and purposes, he appeared to be relatively healthy. And but he was telling me, he's like, I don't feel good. I don't, I'm short of breath. I don't feel good. So they sent him to all kinds of different doctors, and nobody could find anything wrong. So finally they sent him to the cardiologist. And I think it was by September. So in September, they diagnosed him with congestive heart failure.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't know what was causing it, but they said, he's young, he's relatively healthy.
I didn't realize that's what it was. Okay.
And that's what it presented as. And but he wasn't responding to treatment. So that was September 15th. He wasn't responding to treatment. So then, they kept doing more tests and stuff. And so beginning of November, they did an MRI, and they said, no, he's got something in his, all these deposits in his heart. So they had to do a heart biopsy. And then at that time, they sent him up to the cardiac ICU up in Aurora. So he was there for about a week. And this was pre-COVID. So every time he's in the hospital, thankfully I got to be with him. And I would and my kids were amazing because, I had older kids by then, and they would help. I got to stay with him and just devote my time to him. And then the kids kind of took care of the kids. And because my 2 oldest girls were adults already and already married and stuff. And so then they told us that he had this, after they did his biopsy, they found out he had a really rare illness. it's a blood disease, like a blood disorder. It's called amyloidosis, and it was affecting his heart, and actually it was affecting several of his organs. And so amyloidosis is, everybody has amyloid proteins in their body. They produce in your bone marrow, and they go through your bloodstream, and they feed all your organs. And then they break down, and then you kind of pee them out, what's left of them. And so Jesse's were overproducing, and they were irregular. So instead of going through his bloodstream and breaking down, they were sticky and clumping together and making deposits in all of his organs.
Oh, I can't imagine how painful that was for him.
Actually, he didn't have pain.
Really?
Things weren't working the way they were supposed to. Like he had a hard time eating. It was in his lungs, his stomach, his liver. He had a spot in his liver that they saw in the CT they did. They didn't know what it was, and so it wasn't physically painful, but he was short of breath and just the issues with his heart. But it's a really silent disease, but by the time there's no cure for it, and by the time you're diagnosed with it, you have like a 10% chance of surviving the next 6 months.
Wow.
And they can treat it. They can try to treat it with chemo, but then you're doing chemo for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And maybe 5-6 years you have. And so we did do that route. He did opt for chemo, and they told us there was only a 50-50 chance of him even 50% chance of him even surviving chemo, because he was just very critical by that state. So that was beginning of November, and then he ended up passing away because he just kept going downhill really fast. And he ended up passing away December 22nd, 2019.
Wow. So you didn't really have a whole lot of time to prepare for that shift. Wow.
Like 3 months. But he kept telling me, he goes, I know I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die. And I said, stop saying that. He's like, no, I know. And I guess he also had gifts too.
Yeah. It sounds as though he did.
Because I remember earlier that year, he kept telling me, I think I'm going to get into an accident. And I said, why? And he goes, I keep dreaming that I'm in the hospital. And what he didn't tell me was that he was dreaming his own death. And I said, really? And he says, yes, I keep having the same dream over and over that I'm in the hospital. I think maybe I'm going to be in an accident. And I said, well, then you better wear your seatbelt, because what can I say, right?
Right.
And he would have dreams that would come true. I would have dreams. So around the same time, I wasn't dreaming. He wasn't in my dreams anymore. And I was like, why am I not dreaming about him? When you've been married a long time, they're always in your dreams, right? They're always like the backup character in your dreams.
Right.
And I wasn't dreaming about him anymore, and I didn't understand. I even said, God, I want to dream. I want to have, some good dreams with me and Jesse. Like, why am I not dreaming about him? And it was because he wasn't going to be physically there anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was sick, and a few days before he passed, he kept telling me he was sick. Thankfully, he didn't have pain. He wasn't in pain. And I would ask him, and he would say, no, he wasn't in any pain. He was just very weak and, out of breath. He couldn't go up the stairs anymore. So one night I said, okay, I'm going to go take a shower. I'm going to go upstairs and take a shower. We were sleeping in the guest room on the main floor. And he says, okay. So I went to go take a shower, and I would have dreams that would come true and stuff like that, but I never had like a vision while I was awake before. And so I'm in the shower, and I see him open the door, and he steps into the shower, and he has a big smile on his face. And I see him like really clear, just step into the shower smiling at me. And then it kind of fades away. And I knew in my heart that he was never going to shower with me again. And so I, just start immediately, I'm bawling and crying.
Yeah.
And then I pulled myself together. I had promised myself that I wasn't going to grieve for him while he was still living. And he had told me too that he needed me to be strong for him. And so I pulled myself together, and I went back downstairs. But as soon as I saw him, I just started bawling again. And he's like, what's wrong? And I said, I'm just scared you're never going to shower with me again. He said, I will. And then that night he went into cardiogenic shock, and I had to call the ambulance, and then he passed away 3 days later.
Oh, wow.
But,
so how did you push yourself through that? Because that was 2019, you said?
Yeah, that was right before Christmas. It was devastating. I mean, Jesse was I was a stay-at-home mom. He was my whole world.
Yeah.
Like, he was everything. And It was really hard.
Well, and you guys were best friends too. So
he was we did everything together.
Mm-hmm.
We always did everything together.
Mm-hmm.
And I would wait for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I adored my husband, and I would wait for him to get home. Like 3:30, I'd be calling him. What time do you think you're going to be home? Because he wouldn't leave until he was done.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he'd let me know, and I would wait for him,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so after he passed, I was completely lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad because my kids, instead of me coming and supporting them, they just lost their dad. They were rallying around me.
Mm.
And because I couldn't even go to bed by myself. Like me and him, we always went to bed together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he'd come home, we'd eat dinner, and then we'd sit on the couch, and then he'd say, "Come on, let's go to bed." And I'd be like, "Okay." And we did everything together.
Mm-hmm.
We'd shower together. We did everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember my daughter slept with me the first couple weeks, and she'd say, "Mom," she'd see me pacing around. She'd say, "Mom, you want to go to bed?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." So she'd say, "Okay, come on, let's go." And
it's amazing how our kids will take on just like you did for your parents. You took on the responsibility that, you didn't necessarily know any better, but you took care of what you needed to.
Mm-hmm. And my kids used to always, my daughters would always say, "Mom," my oldest, she would always tell, I hope I want to have a marriage like you and Dad." They would always say, because we adored each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that everything was always perfect.
Well,
we had our issues, but we worked through them.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was just, I don't know, I was completely lost.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, really hard. And then so that first year, you're grieving the loss of your spouse. And then the second year comes. And I remember after the first year, I was like, "Okay, Rachel, that's it." Like, I was so happy when COVID shut everything down. Because, so my husband died. And then 2 months later, my dad passed away.
Wow.
Like, I got the flu and he passed away. Him and my mom both got the flu. My mom got better. My dad didn't. And
this was COVID that we didn't know.
This was right before COVID. And he tested, they didn't test for COVID back then, but he tested positive for flu A, which is like swine flu. He tested positive for that. So if he had if he had COVID too, on top of that, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up passing away. And so so Jesse dies in December. My dad passes in February. And then we come back from my dad's funeral, which was the day before Jesse's birthday. And then everything shut down. And I was like, good, because I'm done.
So that's kind of what got you through, where you were forced to face, this is your life now. Let's figure things out.
Yeah, so I think I binged watched Netflix the whole rest of that year. In my, I bought a bunch of loungewear pajamas and sat in his recliner. But
I think that's the message too, is that people need to realize that it's okay to take that time to heal. Well, because healing is different for everybody.
Yes. And you find there's a lot of resources for grief counseling. You can a lot of like what are they called? The hospice places can do this.
Well, and you just started a networking group, or what do you call it? A grief group?
Yes, I just started a grief group.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because that you started that because of what you've been through, right?
Yes, because of what I've been through, and then the work I do now. A lot of my clients, I saw that they were just really struggling with their grief, and
there's no place in Colorado Springs that has.
There's groups, but a lot of them were they have curriculums. So you have to start at this time, and then it's like 10 weeks, and then you're done. And a lot of people I were meeting, they needed ongoing support. And so I decided, okay, and I'm sure there's probably more out there. They're just,
probably.
Yeah, it's just, how do you find them? And so I said, I'm just going to start a grief group. So I did that, and we meet first and third Thursdays of the month at the Treehouse Cafe.
That's cool.
From 11 to 12, and it's an open group. It's any kind of grief, and so it's an open group. And I just wanted to give people safe space to talk about their loved ones, talk about their grief.
It's not just grief from loss, right? Or loss of a loved one. It's a support group too. That, like, if I lost my job, I could come and just.
It's about grief.
Yeah,
it's all about grief.
Because I think that people think about grief in certain aspects of I lost my dad and I'm grieving over that. Well, I was laid off, and that first 6 months to a year I was angry. about being laid off, but I didn't know it, because I was already into, my lending career. I was grateful that I had that to back up or fall back on. But, the thing is that I think a lot of people don't realize where a lot of that comes from.
Yeah, well, we don't talk about grief. We're never taught anything about grief.
Yeah.
Nobody ever talks about it, and so when you're grieving, you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And there's resources, and they'll talk about, the 5 stages of grief and all that other stuff. But again, there's no like really ongoing support. And, grief is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, and everybody has a right to grieve. No matter what the situation, everyone has a right to grieve.
Well, and some people get through it faster than others, and there's no time limit. Even my mom, I think my dad passed away in 95. Well, I can't even say my mom, I can talk about me. My dad passed away in 95, and there's still some times that it's just, it hits me, that he missed out on so much of my life, but yet did he? I think my faith makes it different, but so how did you get past then that first year? Obviously so I want people to know how you got into what you do now, though.
Well, too. So Jesse, like I said, I had that vision, and then he passed away. And so the day he passed away, and I always had spiritual gifts, I just didn't really know. Like, I was always told my gifts were bad and to leave them alone and don't open any of those doors because it was bad. So I grew up really afraid of my gifts. So whenever I'd feel I would always see things or feel things, know things. Thought I was really lucky, or I was a really good guesser. But I would feel other spirits, and it always terrified me because I thought, it was just bad stuff coming to get me. So when Jesse passed away, the night he passed, we all took turns saying goodbye to him. We were all at the hospital with him, which was actually really beautiful. We all got to be with him when he left. And as I was walking out, I was the last one to walk out to say my goodbyes and walk out of the ICU. And as I'm walking, I see him walking with me. But I see it inside my mind. But I can see him like walking with me, and I thought, man, I must be in shock because he's in his hospital gown, he's just walking with me. And I get home, and I was talking to my mom, and I pull the phone away, and somehow my phone had went into my gallery and pulled up a picture of Jesse smiling at me, and I knew that he was letting me know he was okay. A friend of mine had messaged me, and she said, hey, and she was also a widow, and she said, I went to go see this lady, Carm. And after my husband passed, and she really helped us. Maybe you can go see her. She goes, oh, by the way, you're already friends with her on Facebook. I said, oh, okay, that's weird. So then, so I call her, and, I made an appointment with her, and I started crying as soon as I talked to her. And she's like, he's showing me red and white roses. What is that? I'm like, oh, those are the flowers that we got for his funeral. And she's like, he's showing me the shower. And I said, we used to always shower together. And, I made an appointment, went to go see her, and I walked in. She says, wow, you have a really bright light. And I was like, okay. So then we do the reading, and she validates a lot of things for me. And then at the end, I said, when I walked in, you said I had a really bright light. I said, what does that mean? And she says, oh, that means you're really open. I was like, okay, so what does that mean? And she goes, well, you're very gifted. And I said, really? And she goes, yes, you're very gifted. You could probably do what I do. And I said, yeah, right. And she goes, no, I'm serious. You can probably do what I do. And I was like, okay. And so she said she had a class that was coming up, like an intuition class, and she told me that I should take it. And so I did. I took it, and the rest is history. Now we share an office together.
Oh,
I do what she does, and we share an office together.
Yeah. And you're bringing gifts to other people now.
Yes.
Do you have anything on a bucket list? Do you keep a bucket list of things that you... Or is it a living list? I think that's what other people have actually named it instead of bucket.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything. Like I said, I always wanted to be a mom. And I got to do that. I wanted to stay home, take care of my kids. I just had my first granddaughter.
Oh, yes, you did.
So we have a baby in the family. And that one's a funny story too, because I teach, so I help my mentor Carm, I help her teach classes. And so last year I was helping her teach a mediumship class, and I was working with the lady, and she was having a hard time like connecting with anybody. We're doing a practice reading. I said, well, see if you can connect with Jesse, because he's got really strong energy. And she says, And she connected with him, and she says, "Oh, he calls you babe." And she gets choked up. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I can feel how much love he has for you." And she goes, "He says you're going to be a grandma." I said, "Really?" And she goes, "Yes." And that was October last year.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Okay." And I said, "By who?" She's like, "I don't know." And then later on, I went to a Halloween party, and some of my psychic friends were there. And one of them says, "You've got a grandbaby coming." And I said, she goes, "Who's pregnant?" I said, "I don't know. I heard somebody's going to be pregnant, but I don't know who." She says, "Well, it's the quiet one." I'm like, "Okay, I don't know who that is." They're all kind of quiet. And so then, in March, we did another class. I ran into that student again, and she goes, "Oh, I was meditating this morning, and I felt your husband come in." I said, "Oh, really?" And she goes, "Yes." And he was talking about something, and I asked him, like, "Who's the one that's going to get pregnant?" And she goes, and he just said, "Oh, she doesn't know yet." And I'm like,
oh,
what is it? And then I think about a week later, my daughter came and told me she was pregnant.
Oh, that's so neat.
Yeah. And
wow.
So I was like,
and then you just had the baby, or she just had the baby.
And so the baby was actually due the day after me and Jesse's anniversary.
Mm.
And but she ended up being born on the 5th.
Oh, wow.
And our anniversary is October 11th.
Oh,
so it just passed.
Yeah.
But I was like, what a great anniversary present. Because, I still get sad on my anniversary that he's not physically here, even though I feel him a lot and I get messages from him all the time. It's still bittersweet.
Yeah.
Although I love that I can connect with him still, it's still hard not having him here physically. And there's grief around that.
Yeah.
But it's nice. I said, "Oh, this is nice." Because now instead of being sad that our anniversary is coming up and he's not here to celebrate it with me, now I'm going to be busy helping to plan birthday parties.
Yes. Yeah. That's so cool. And your kids are doing good.
They're all doing well. Yeah. It's been a hard journey. I think the last year I had my boys in therapy for about a year because I saw that they were struggling. And boys handle grief so much differently than girls. And so I had them in therapy for a while, and just talking a lot with them. And I kept telling Jesse all last year, like, we need a baby in the family, Jesse. We need a baby in the family. We need something to look forward to again, and we need, something to be hopeful for. And so I'm glad we have a baby.
That's really cool. Wow. Well, I'd love to talk with you more, but unfortunately, we'll have to have you back again, and we'll have to share more stories.
Yes,
but I do appreciate you sharing what you have shared with me today, and of course everybody else.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Yes. And thank you everybody for joining us today. I am Sandy Shook. I am your mortgage advisor. I can help you look at what your figures are, what your numbers are, to see if you actually can purchase a home if you're not in one. Otherwise, if you're in one and you're kind of strapped at the end of your month, let me look at your numbers to see if we might be able to refinance. Even if you are in a low interest rate, it might make sense to do that. And if you have equity in your house, it's always great to get into investments. And Jesse. Oh my goodness, Jesse's here.
Oh, of course he is.
Rachel, you can let everybody know how to reach you. Not Jesse. Well, Jesse can come too.
Yeah. He's very, like I said, his energy is very strong.
Yeah. But if you can let everybody know how to reach you.
Yes, so I have a website, and it's rachaelortega.com. And then also my phone number, it's 719-322-3923.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sandy.